I'm Isa, born and raised in the charming town of Harrow, where everyone knows your name, and secrets are short-lived. After high school, I left to attend college, then dove straight into the retail world after graduation. My passion wasn't just for selling, it was lingerie. With relentless drive, I worked my way up and eventually owned a chain of lingerie stores. From cozy little boutiques to upscale showrooms, I dedicated myself to my work, achieving professional success. But despite all my accomplishments, something felt missing. Then, Henry appeared. It started innocently enough, a friend request from a man dressed in a sharp suit. His profile picture showcasing a gaze that was just as piercing as his attire. Curious, I accepted. Turns out, he was a lawyer, which explained the impeccable suit. He messaged me one evening while I was working through some accounts, and from the first exchange, I was intrigued. His wit was infectious, and he quickly became my go-to for light-hearted conversations after a long day. From joking about terrible pickup lines to deep chats about our dreams, his humor was exactly what I needed. One evening, he suggested we meet in person. We agreed on a coffee date at my favorite cafe, known for its strong brews. Henry was even more captivating in real life than I had imagined. We talked for hours about everything, business, personal aspirations, and he hung on every word I said, showing genuine interest in me. After a year of getting to know each other, Henry made it clear he wanted to take things further. One chilly evening, while I was locking up one of my stores, he appeared unexpectedly. His breath misted in the cold air as he nervously presented a small, elegant box. His eyes were earnest, his voice filled with uncertainty. "We've done well, just the two of us. Maybe it's time to make it official," he said. As I stood there, keys in hand, Henry flashed that signature lopsided smile that always made my heart skip. "Isa, will you marry me? I don't want to beat around the bush. I want you by my side forever." My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of excitement and uncertainty swirling within me. Marriage? Was I ready? But when I met his gaze, everything felt perfectly aligned. "Yes," I whispered, the word escaping almost involuntarily. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile softened, but then his expression grew more serious. "There's one more thing we need to talk about," he said, his voice suddenly solemn. The word prenup hit me like a cold wave. "Really, Henry, is that necessary?" I asked, my voice filled with surprise. He took my hands gently, sensing my discomfort. "Isa, it's not about trust, it's just practical. With my job as a lawyer, I've seen too many messy separations. This is just a precaution, something that protects us both." I hesitated, trying to process everything. What kind of protection are we talking about? He retrieved a stack of papers from his briefcase. "It's simple. If either of us strays, the one who cheats forfeits their assets. It's fair, straightforward, and you know I'd never betray you. This is just about being cautious." I took a deep breath. It wasn't the romantic proposal I had imagined, but life with Henry had always been full of unexpected turns. I glanced at the papers, then back at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. "I'll consider it, but just so we're clear, Henry, I don't plan on giving you a reason to ever use this." "That's all I ask," he replied, a sense of relief in his voice. We celebrated the engagement at a cozy restaurant, the atmosphere perfect, the food divine. Henry's charm made me forget the awkwardness of the earlier conversation. As we strolled beneath the stars, Henry pulled me close. "You know I love you, right? No contract can change that." I rested my head against his chest. "I know, I love you too, but let's just make sure this prenup doesn't come between us, okay?" He kissed my forehead. "I promise, it won't." A few days later, after consulting my own lawyer, I signed the prenup. It felt strange to sign something focused on a potential end before the beginning, but I trusted Henry and was ready to take a chance on love. We were the couple everyone admired, always sharing laughs and private glances at parties, but as the months went by, subtle shifts began to occur, small cracks forming in the facade, hinting at deeper issues. A few weeks after a shopping trip, I found myself chatting with a sales manager at a perfume store, discussing fragrances. Henry was noticeably upset when we left, and as we walked away from the mall, he asked sharply, "Who was that?" Confused, I replied, "Just the sales guy. I was asking about the perfumes." "Why?" His eyes narrowed. "You seemed really into him." I was taken aback. "Are you serious right now?" I froze, stunned by Henry's accusation. "I was just talking about perfumes, Henry. What's going on with you?" He scoffed and dismissed the conversation with a shake of his head. "Forget it." "Let's just go home," he muttered, and we continued walking in silence. But that moment marked the start of a troubling pattern. Henry grew more possessive and distant, his jealousy simmering beneath the surface. Whenever I spoke to another man, even in passing, he'd sulk or make sharp, sarcastic remarks. At home, he became withdrawn, spending hours on his laptop or phone, leaving me to eat dinner alone more often than not. Unable to handle the growing tension, I confronted him one evening in his study. "Henry, we need to talk," I said, firmly closing his laptop to grab his attention. He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. You don't get it. The pressure at work, everything. And when I see you laughing and chatting with other men, it gets to me. It feels like you don't respect our relationship enough to keep your distance." The conversation escalated, frustrations on both sides boiling over. The situation worsened when I learned that Henry had been telling people that I was flirting with other men. "Henry, you've been spreading rumors about me? Saying I flirt with other guys?" I demanded, my anger reaching its peak. "It's not like that," he stammered, trying to explain himself. "I might have said something, but it's just because of the way they look at you." "I can't believe this," I interrupted. "You have no right to talk behind my back. You're supposed to support me, not tear me down." That heated argument left a lingering tension between us. A few days later, I found a note from Henry on the kitchen counter. His handwriting was neat but hurried, as though he was trying to make amends. Let's try to start over. Meet me at the Grand View Hotel, room 181, at 7:10 p.m. tonight. Let's put the past behind us and move forward. The note was a surprise. Maybe this was his way of trying to fix things. With a mix of apprehension and hope, I decided to go. The day felt like a blur as I fixed my thoughts on the evening, wondering if we could truly start fresh. As night fell, a flutter of hope stirred in my chest. But when I arrived at the hotel, Henry was not the man I expected. As soon as I stepped through the door, he erupted. "So, the prodigal wife finally returns," he snarled, his voice thick with contempt. "Henry, we need to talk," I said, but before I could continue, he cut me off, his anger boiling over. "Something terrible happened tonight," I implored, trying to explain, but he was deaf to my words. He slammed a stack of photos down on the table, his face twisted in fury. "Then explain these," he shouted. Trembling, I picked up the photos. My heart sank as I saw them, images of me in a hotel room, in a compromising position with a man I didn't recognize. My world tilted. "Henry, I swear I don't know this man. I've never seen him before. Something strange happened, I can't explain it." I stammered, panic rising in my chest. His laugh was dark, sending a chill through me. "A monstrous mistake, or your monstrous actions," he sneered. "Marrying you was my actual mistake." Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I didn't do this. You have to believe me," I pleaded, but Henry was unmoved. "Believe you? Why should I? You're nothing but a liar and a cheater. I'll make sure you don't get a dime from me. I'm taking this to court." "I'll take everything," he vowed coldly. Grabbing his suitcase, he stormed out, slamming the door with a force that shook the walls. I collapsed onto the couch, my body racked with sobs. A dull, pounding pain throbbed in my head, and the events of the night became a blur, my thoughts foggy and disjointed. It wasn't just a headache, it felt like my mind was clouded, and something wasn't right. Then it hit me, the wine. I'd only had one glass, but the dizziness and blackout were far too severe for that. I called my friend Riley, a nurse, desperate for answers. "Riley, something's wrong." I had one glass of wine, and then everything went dark. I woke up hours later, and now Henry has these photos of me. "I don't understand," I explained, my voice shaky. After a pause, Riley's voice came back, steady but concerned. It sounds like you were drugged. You need to get to a hospital or a lab, and have yourself tested immediately. Tell them everything, especially about the wine and the symptoms." I drove to the lab in a daze, my thoughts spinning as I tried to make sense of everything. At the lab, I explained the situation to the technician, who took several vials of blood for testing. Days later, a letter from Henry arrived. My hand shook as I tore it open. The contents confirmed my worst fears. The letter, filled with cold legal language, informed me that Henry was suing me for infidelity, using the photos as evidence, and citing our prenuptial agreement as grounds to strip me of everything. The trial was set for a month from now. Panicked, I called my lawyer, Jacob. "ISA, come to my office. We need to strategize," he said, his voice offering a small measure of comfort. I drove to Jacob's office, my mind racing through a dozen scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. As I pulled into the parking lot, my resolve solidified. The weight of what I had endured began to settle in as I walked away from the courtroom, the faint hum of voices and clinking of legal papers fading into the background. It had been a long, hard battle, but in the end, I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my sense of justice. The courtroom buzzed with the energy of a new beginning, and as I walked out, the world felt like it was finally shifting in my favor. Henry's dramatic claims had crumbled under the weight of the evidence, the actor's confession, the blood test results, and the evidence of Henry's past manipulations were enough to not only dismantle his false accusations but expose the monster lurking beneath the surface of our marriage. The vindication was profound, but it was the emotional toll that weighed heavier on me. I had spent so many sleepless nights questioning myself, doubting the truth, wondering if I had done something wrong. Now, the truth was undeniable, and it was freeing, yet it felt like the first step in a long journey to healing. Later, as I returned to my lingerie store, the bustling energy of the shop felt both familiar and foreign. It was a place that had always been mine, yet the shadow of Henry's manipulation had loomed over it for too long. Now, with the weight of his control lifted, I could breathe easier. The space was mine again. I could feel the confidence growing within me, slowly, but surely. The aftermath was not without its challenges. My reputation had been unfairly tarnished, and while Henry's actions had been exposed, the scars he left on me were still healing. I knew it wouldn't be easy to erase the pain, but I was finally free to start over, to rebuild what had been shattered. As I locked the doors that night, I looked out at the sunset streaming through the windows. The world had shifted, my world had shifted. I was no longer the woman Henry had tried to trap. I was someone strong, someone capable of standing up for herself, even in the face of adversity, and with that, I knew I could face whatever came next. I didn't have all the answers, but I had my truth, and that would be enough.